On most days, even cold winter days like this one, Fir Grove Public School at lunchtime would be full of kids, teachers, and parents. But on January 20th, Fir Grove and elementary schools across the Greater Toronto Area and Ottawa were closed. Almost 200,000 education workers in Ontario's public school system have started indefinite, rolling strikes after talks with the province's right-wing government broke down. Teachers said they called for strikes over proposed cuts by the provincial government. Matthew Hicks, an adult day school teacher and strike captain at the Emery Collegiate Picket, said educators are fighting for a range of issues.
Walking the line because of cuts to education in terms of funding, class size, our special education programs, and so forth.
The Conservative government of Ontario Premier Doug Ford, the brother of the late Toronto Mayor Rob Ford, has planned deep cuts to education that critics say will compromise the quality of education and cost thousands of jobs. Despite campaign pledges to not cut education funding, the Ford government announced cuts of over $1 billion, including $235 million for special education programs for children in need and at-risk students, Indigenous students, and new immigrants. Guidance counselor Derek Chica is alarmed by the cuts to these particular programs.
There's a student in particular I'm thinking of who got engaged, became the president of the student advocacy group, was doing badly in school, became the president, and then all of a sudden their grades started going up and they went to university and everything. So these extracurricular things that we were able to run with funds before have been cut, and that has an impact on student achievement because they're not engaged in like the general school atmosphere as much as they could be before.
The right-wing government is also proposing cuts to per-student funding that could increase class sizes by as much as 27% and requiring use of e-learning modules that will remove upwards of 3,000 full-time teaching positions. A leaked document from the Ministry of Education showed the government plans to sell the online learning courses and platforms after they have been instituted. Teachers worry the sales are a backdoor way to privatize public education.
It came out recently that he wants online learning not for the betterment of students, but because he wants to be able to sell that and make a profit off it. And that's not the way we as teachers, or most of society, I would say, sees people.
There are 4 unions representing teachers, early childhood educators, and support staff: the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation, the Ontario English Catholic Teachers Association, the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario, and the Francophone Association des Enseignants et des Enseignants Franco-Ontariens. This is the first time in over 20 years the unions have coordinated this type of strike action. Unions have demanded talks over smaller class sizes, more resources for students with special needs, protection for kindergarten programs, more action around reduction of violent incidents, and fair compensation for educators. But the province walked away from negotiations and instead announced a childcare subsidy of up to $60 per day for all families with kids in elementary schools to allay public concerns over the impacts of a strike. There are over 2 million children and youth enrolled in public schools in Ontario, and the subsidy could cost up to $48 million a day.
So the public doesn't agree with being bribed. Education is something that Canadians have always believed should be fully funded. It's the reason why parents go to work every day and pay their taxes so their kids have a well-funded and progressive education system.
And it's just very upsetting. This government's just flat out lying about what they're doing. They say there's no money. They give this money away. They give themselves 14% raises. And it's very just upsetting on the front lines to see all these lies that the government puts out.
These strikes are not the only resistance the Conservatives have faced over their education plans. Last April, more than 100,000 students walked out of class at over 600 schools across Ontario to protest the planned cuts. 2 years into its mandate, the Ford government has ushered in a harsh austerity regime, canceling the $15 minimum wage increase and social assistance reforms, among other cuts. Many teachers in Ontario know that they and other teachers across the globe are on the front lines of the fight against neoliberal austerity.
In the grassroots have been very inspired by what's been happening in Chicago and see the potential of how unions and education workers can even like fight homelessness and things like that, right? So yeah, I think it's an inspiration.
Thanks a lot for watching. Appreciate it. But do us one more solemn favor. Hit the subscribe button below. You know you want to. Stay up on the videos.